Chapter 5: Acknowledging What Is. Having immersed myself in personal growth and development in earnest for over 4 years, I understood the concept that nothing has meaning but the meaning we attach to it. The problem was my negative association to debt was so deeply ingrained and loaded with intense emotion that I couldn't seem to get any healthy perspective on it. In a bid to shift my perspective, my previous coaches and friends would say to me, "The credit card companies trust you and see you as a good money manager, and that's why they granted you the credit card. And wealthy people have credit cards too." I'd hear myself replying, "I know, you're right, thank you," to stop them talking because inside I was screaming, "But I hate myself for having this debt." No amount of reasoning conversation was going to shift my vantage point. I needed to confront my truth head on, and that meant not denying my feelings, but instead interpreting and understanding them. How we think determines how we feel. How we feel determines our actions and behaviours, and how we act and behave determines our results. So, acknowledging what is means fully embracing where you are right now and becoming sensitive to your feelings. Feelings exist to be felt, but often we're rushing around either too busy or too afraid to really feel our emotions. We try to distract ourselves and numb our bad feelings by spending more money or with food or alcohol or doom scrolling or Netflix. But as the formidable Brené Brown says, we can't selectively numb. In our attempts to numb the bad stuff, we also numb our ability to fully experience the good stuff. So if, like me, you've been in debt for some time, it could be the case that you've become so familiar and habituated with the negative feelings that they've become background white noise. It's like living close to an airport. After a while, you become so accustomed to the noise of the aircraft taking off or coming into land that you learn to zone it out. You're no longer aware of it until, of course, you get a visitor who happens by as an airplane enters the flight path. As they look at you in bewilderment and shout over the loud engines roaring overhead, "How can you stand this noise?" you suddenly stop and listen and realize just how loud it is. Well, I'm that visitor for you. I want to awaken you to the feelings that you've learned to ignore, dismiss, or shove back down to the dark corners of your consciousness. In acknowledging what is in the context of your current debt situation, I want you to allow yourself to feel the feelings that are coming up when you acknowledge your debt and quite literally sit with them. They're likely to feel painful and upsetting, but feel assured that as you acknowledge them and feel them, you're going to be able to, over time, neutralize your emotions and therefore rationalize your thought processes. In the beginning of my journey, acknowledging what is simply meant no longer avoiding the truth of my situation and therefore no longer avoiding the painful feelings. Avoidance was a major part of the problem for me. I chose not to face my debt because I didn't want to experience the negative emotion that surged whenever I did. Feelings such as shame and guilt overwhelmed me, and I feared the intensity of these emotions, so avoidance was my solution. This was also the root of much of my misunderstanding of the law of attraction. I believed that by simply avoiding the problem, it would go away. But you see, that's where I was going wrong for all these years. There's effort in avoidance. And for me, it was actually a lot of hard mental and emotional effort to pretend there was no problem. There was actually fear coursing through my veins when I was in avoidance. My joy was fake. My need to avoid was fueled by shame, and because I was feeling so acutely ashamed by the nature of the law of attraction, more on the law coming up next, I was continually attracting more into my experience to feel ashamed about, and that included more debt. As I faced up to the reality of my situation, I focused inwardly on my body and allowed myself to experience the feelings. I set aside some time when I knew I would not be disturbed, and I focused inwards on my feelings while I looked at or thought about my debt. It was distinctly uncomfortable, but as I stayed with it, I started to gain clarity. As I sat with my eyes closed, I placed my attention where there was the most intense feeling. It felt like a blockage in my solar plexus, and my heart was aching. I sat and I acknowledged my body and these feelings, and after a short while, I felt somehow separated from my body, like I was just observing it. I suppose that's all I was doing, just observing, noticing and acknowledging for the first time ever. It never occurred to me until I started this journey that the bad feeling I experienced when I looked at my mounting debt wasn't really about the debt itself, but rather all the meaning that I'd placed on it. I had so many negative stories and beliefs about what that debt represented and what it reflected about me and my personality. Once I was able to observe the feelings, I was able then to isolate them and label them, which meant I could unravel the stories and beliefs that were behind these intense feelings. This gave me the best vantage point to then begin the process of replacing them with more empowering beliefs. Not only that, but when you allow your emotions to be fully experienced by you, the charge around them dissipates, their grip on you loosens, and you naturally and organically free up energy to pour into creativity, resourcefulness, and increased joy. Back to my journal excerpt. Day 1 continued. I feel like crying right now. My heart is aching and I'm feeling overwhelmed with shame as I acknowledge the truth. Deep breath. Here goes. Right now, I am £47,788 in debt across various credit cards, an overdraft, and money I owe to my mum. What a mess. I've been in debt from the moment I was able to apply for credit. When I was 18, I left home to go to Bradford University. Such an exciting and liberating time. It was a time when there was a clear division between townies and students. Townies had money. Students embraced the poverty mindset. We were proud. I'm sure most of us deliberately dressed down in full respect of our student status. As the banks enticed us in with their branded flyers and banners, I walked straight into NatWest and applied for my student loan, the full £800 that I was entitled to. I can't even remember why. In those days, we received grants and my parents funded me. My mum paid me a monthly standing order, and it wrenches my gut to think about what that means now. She was supporting me and I was still wanting more. So that's the start. 18 years old, not a care in the world, credit available to me without any knowledge of how I was ever going to repay it. I wasn't thinking about how I'd repay it. I just believed that I would very easily pay it back once I was working. What did I spend it on? In that first year, I paid for driving lessons and I got my driver's license. Sensible, I guess. Oh, and I went to Egypt for 3 weeks with my best friend Diane. Looking back, how the hell did I explain that one to my parents? Fresh from the summer holiday to Egypt, I returned to Bradford for the start of year 2, and I walked straight into the bank again and applied for my next hit. This time it was a little more, £950. What did I do with that money? Oh, I spent 3 weeks in the summer of 1995 in New York and Chicago with my other friend Charlotte. And of course, in year 3, I applied again. By the end of my 3 years at university, I had £3,000 in student loan debt, and I'd already applied for my first credit card. Now, I realise that by today's standards, that amount is minuscule, but the point is, that was in 1993, and it was completely unnecessary. So there you have it, the start of a 23-year relationship with bad debt, with no seeming justification. My appreciation for this easy money turned sour very quickly. As soon as I started earning money, I resented paying for stuff that I had already enjoyed years earlier with money I was earning today. I began to get quite obsessed with paying off my debt. Every year, amongst my New Year's resolution was pay off credit card debts. Every year. And every year, the credit card balances were creeping up instead of going down. Yet, I never addressed why that was happening until today. I'm 42 years old and I have £47,788 in debt. Oh, 37,788 owing to credit cards and an overdraft, and £10,000 owing to my mum. As I write this, I'm experiencing a prickly sensation on the surface of my skin and my stomach is lurching. There are only 2 people in the world right now who are aware of the extent of my situation. They are me and my new coach, Hasna. Not my partner, not my parents, just me and Hasna. In fact, just 24 hours ago, I was not even aware of this exact figure myself because I dared not acknowledge it. I knew it was getting bad, but I couldn't face it. Occasionally, I would declare, right, I'm going to reclaim control, but still, I didn't acknowledge where I was fully. I spent time tuning into my feelings like this almost every day in the first 2 weeks. I would just spend time focusing inward on my physical responses to money and my debt, giving space and acknowledging those feelings and allowing whatever thoughts to emerge. Journal excerpt day 2. As I experience so much conflict around my debt, I abhor it, and yet I'm continually perpetuating more. I feel my body in a heightened hypervigilant state. I'm experiencing fear, discomfort, and frustration. How could I let this happen to myself? Which leads me to see how there is a part of myself that I hate and reject. I hate and reject the part of me that gets myself into debt. Oh, there is so much shame, which is the reason I haven't been able to talk to anyone with specifics. Jeremy, my partner, knows I have debt and a couple of close friends, but they don't know the extent of it. How could they? I didn't even know. The shame I feel is of someone who is out of control, who can't manage herself and her money, someone who can't say no, someone who is greedy and undisciplined, all representing my negative associations with my debt situation, all creating such an emotional swirl that is clouding my judgment and causing me this anxiety and stress. End of journal excerpt. So, you see, I had subconsciously defined myself as a loser, as someone who is greedy, undisciplined, and out of control when it comes to money. No wonder I felt bad. Once I knew that these were my beliefs, I could focus on changing them. I actually started to enjoy being a conscious observer of my every emotion. I started to play with it. If I was engaged in an activity or in a conversation and I experienced some strong negative emotion, I would mentally dial into the feeling and ponder it. As I allowed the feeling to be felt, I asked myself the question, what is the thought behind this feeling? In being with my feelings and allowing them to rise to the surface, I also recognized a pattern of chronic people pleasing that had been previously beneath the surface of my conscious awareness. I wanted approval from others and I strived to be impressive all the time, which meant that I struggled to say no. When my friends invited me to events that meant spending more money than I had, I didn't think twice about using my credit card so that I could say yes and go. When it came to birthdays and Christmas, I'd spend a fortune on presents and again, without thinking, I used my credit cards. Even when I was being sold to, I would never just say, no, thank you to the salesperson. Instead, I would come up with some silly, long winded tale about how I just need to go somewhere right now, but I'll definitely be back, even if I had no intention of going back. Every time I got clarity on the negative thoughts and limiting beliefs that were driving the intense feelings, I celebrated. Day by day, I was becoming more self-aware and in control and actually more compassionate with myself. I realized how much my bogus beliefs had ruled my life, and now I was taking my power back. Over time, the intensity of the emotions diminished until I was able to consider my debt without any negative emotion impairing my judgment. When you're operating at a level of shame, guilt, and powerlessness, chronic or otherwise, your reality reflects it back to you unceasingly. Changing your stories and beliefs about debt and accepting the truth that debt really has no meaning except the meaning you've given it means you can begin to take your power back. Having a neutral perspective means you can implement the strategies that ensure repayment and a healthier relationship with money in general. Call to action. Set aside 15 to 30 minutes of undisturbed quiet time and have your journal close to hand. Either look at your credit card statements or just think about your current financial situation and notice when you start to feel those all too familiar negative emotions. Close your eyes and mentally scan your body up and down a few times, and then allow your internal awareness and attention to rest on the place where you're feeling the most intensity. So where the charge is the most dense and the most heavy, allow your attention to go there. Now, this sensation, it could be in the pit of your stomach or your chest. It might be a sensation in your throat or an ache in your heart. Focus on the feeling. Allow it to be there. And after a while, ask yourself, while still focusing on the feelings, ask yourself these questions. What are the thoughts fueling this feeling? What am I saying to myself that is making me feel these feelings? And what is my belief right now? Sometimes it helps to intensify the feeling in order to jog the subconscious into revealing the buried beliefs. I do this by picturing a dial with the numbers 0 to 10 on it, rather like a combination dial on a safe on my feeling. So I picture this dial on the sensation. I ask myself, what is the intensity of this feeling right now? 0 to 10, 10 being the most intense, 0 being not at all. So I get the rating as it is in the moment. I then imagine turning the dial up on my feelings. And as I do that, the feelings intensify. So I like to think of this process as really grabbing the attention of my subconscious, making it sit up and take notice. Now, take as long as you need with this process. You're truly giving yourself a magical gift of awareness. As thoughts and beliefs start emerging, write them down in your journal. This is so important as it takes them out of your head and onto paper. So you can literally step back and view them with more objectivity. Are these thoughts and beliefs serving you? I very much doubt it. So now you can begin to write the new thoughts and beliefs that you'd like to think instead and place all of your focus on them until they become part of you. More on this coming up.